And Joel, great to see you. Thank you.
You too, Anna.
So the Israeli Prime Minister's office has not commented on this development yet. We're waiting on that. We're watching that. Will Israel agree to a permanent ceasefire, do you think?
You know, Anna, the only proven way to get the hostages out and to get aid into Gaza is through a ceasefire agreement. And this is now going to put a lot of pressure on Israel because the Israeli people want these hostages out. They want this war to end. But of course, the real trick is, of course, what to do with Hamas afterwards. And this goes to the larger question, which is for a permanent end state where there is final peace and calm between the two sides. That's going to require more investment by us, by Arab neighbors, a political process. That's not part of these negotiations. So I think in the near term, we're likely to see Israel respond cautiously but positively to some type of deal to get their hostages out. But they're going to also want to make sure they have the ability to go back and continue to fight if they need to.
As we take a look at this new development, let's also take a look back and remind our viewers of the points of contention, the real sticking points here. What does Israel want? What does Hamas want? We've got a full screen we can show of that. Of course, it's the length of the ceasefire. That's one of the sticking points. Israel prefers a temporary pause. Hamas wants this permanent end to fighting. We've got the withdrawal of Israeli forces and the amount of aid going into Gaza. So that's what we want to hit on now, is that aid going into Gaza, too. News Nation speaking to the ambassador of Israel, Mike Huckabee, about how he sees all of this ending. Let's take a listen to that first.
President Trump has made it crystal clear Hamas has no future in Gaza. They're not going to be able to govern there. They can't stay there. So as soon as they decide that their future is at best exiled out of Gaza, this can all end. It should have ended October the 8th of 2023. The reason it hasn't, and the reason that so many people have suffered because of it, is not because of Israel, not because of the United States. It singularly falls upon the shoulders of Hamas.
Well, look, despite aid deliveries resuming in Gaza, Joel, the UN warns the risk of famine is still extremely high. What does Gaza's future look like?
Anna, Gaza's future is bleak. There's going to be a need for decades of recovery and rebuilding. The Gazan people, the Palestinian people, they really are, quite frankly, in a devastated position. But to the ambassador's point, he's right. Look, Hamas has continued to fight a war that it's lost, and it continues to expose its people to ongoing onslaught by the Israeli military. It's not surrendered, and it's living underground, likely off of food that it received over recent months. And so it's a really horrifying situation for the Palestinian people, which goes to what I was describing earlier. There needs to be an end-state political process that allows Palestinian governance, that gives confidence at the same time to Israelis for their security, so that the rebuilding process that we're talking about can continue. But this is going to be a very long, drawn-out, multi-year process.
Yeah, we know it will be. And we've been talking about them being potentially on the brink of famine for, I want to say, a year now. Let's move on to this. We want to hit on this other breaking news that's just happening today. So it's out of Iran, where the foreign minister says parts of the U.S. proposal for a nuclear deal have been presented. A sixth round of talks between the United States and Iran is in the works, but no date has been announced. Are we closer to reaching a deal on that?
Well, we are, but at the same time, like all of these, the fight is very much aggressively in public right now. We're going to see on Monday the International Atomic Energy Agency release a report criticizing Iran for its nuclear behavior, assessing that they now have the capacity to build up to 10 nuclear bombs if they were to enrich their material further. And so the Israelis are very concerned about this. So I think we could likely have an interim agreement between us and Iran that lays out parameters for diplomacy, but that's not going to satisfy the Israeli concerns. And so it's just one stage, but really what to do with Iran's enrichment capability, just like what to do with Hamas being on the ground in Gaza. These are the core problems that are not necessarily being resolved in these negotiations.
Yeah, we can't forget about the connections between those two as well. Former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Joel Rubin, appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Anna.